Many African countries, regardless of their social, economic and political conditions, are confronted with one problem: the issue of housing.
Africa is facing a housing crisis due to a population boom. That's according to Shelter Africa.
Nigeria, for now, has a housing deficit of over 18 million.
More than 5 million slum dwellers receive proper housing.
A lack of adequate housing in Nigeria affects up to 16 million people. Further down in South Africa, the housing shortage stands at about 3.7 million units. To the east, Kenya has an annual housing demand of 250,000 units against an estimated supply of only 50,000 units. Overall, Habitat for Humanity says that Africa faces a shortfall of at least 51 million housing units. But what's the reason for the crisis? Rapid urbanization and a growing slum population is the leading cause of the current housing crisis. It's estimated that squatter settlements house 40% and in some cases 75% of the population within fast-growing cities in developing countries.
It's a sector that needs careful attention because one of the human rights is to be able to provide shelter, which is ingrained in many constitutions.
Cities are expanding at exponential rates, which are frequently in conflict with urban planning and development. According to the report Stocktaking of the Housing Sector in Sub-Saharan Africa, Africa could have as many as 1.2 billion urban dwellers by 2050 and 4.5 million new residents in informal settlements each year. To help bridge the gap, Africa has turned to China. According to a report by Deloitte, China accounted for 31% of all infrastructure projects under construction in Africa last year. Chinese companies and financial institutions have been at the forefront of modernizing infrastructure and growing Africa's real estate sector.
Fortunately, housing is one area where from individual to private sector can always come back to finance, but you need then to have access to material for construction. This is where China comes in a big way, because I can assure you that you look at any buildings now here, out of the window, even anywhere you look around, you will find most of those buildings have a very high import content and most likely would have come from China.
The benefits of Chinese construction companies operating in Africa are immeasurable. The most effective is the speed at which all projects are completed. William Masharia is a Kenyan who has been working for Chinese construction company China Wu Yi as an engineering manager. He has developed first-hand knowledge on the Chinese style of construction over the last few years.
Doing a 20-story building with around 3 basements, 2 years is enough to do it up to finishes. Before, these ones would take 5-6 years. Excavation alone before would take around a year or so. Nowadays we can be able to do it within 3 months.
Training of the domestic workforce is also a common channel for knowledge transfer.
There are a lot of benefits. One thing is we learn a lot because of the technology they bring and the empowerment they bring.
There is a symbiotic link between Africa's need for technology, infrastructure and the accompanying skills and what China can offer. Construction done by Chinese companies rates higher than those of the European Union.
There's a lot of trust in this, and occupancy levels can attest to this. And yeah, I've never had a complaint of somebody saying, oh, this was done by the Chinese or this was done by this, that. I have no confidence in this. We are here, we are engineers in this country, and we can attest that whatever that's usually done is up to standard.
All this is attributed to a thorough planning process before construction begins, cutting valuable time spent on projects.
We had the unorthodox way of doing construction in the past, more manual. So doing even the high-rise structures, it was more of a manual system. But nowadays we have ways of using forms and systems that you can recycle and work over more floors.
China's meticulous planning can also be seen in Angola, where a $3.5 billion housing project was built in record time by CITIC Construction.
联合舰队的各个成员
In our combined fleet, different companies with different strengths are united to maximize their talents. For example, CITIC Construction is responsible for the whole commercial organizing, while our construction companies build all the houses, and logistic companies shipped over 4 million tons of domestic building materials. We have developed a creative business model for this project.
The firm has turned a rural area into a modern satellite town in the capital, Luanda. The newly built units have 24-hour water and power supply, which was hard to imagine during the early stages of Angola's post-war reconstruction.
The living conditions here are much better than my previous house, because all the buildings are new and life is very ordered. This is an open city with many green belts.
The same can be said of Egypt. Despite the COVID-19 outbreak, Chinese direct investments in Egypt surged by more than 19% in 2020. Experts say Chinese cooperation is vital to the growth of the North African nation's economy, and there is a lot to glean from China's experience in development.
The Chinese success story is unprecedented in human history. No country has ever managed to post economic growth of 10% annually for 30 years. When they started the reforms, they had the same problems we face now. Problems in the workforce, unemployment, currency, markets, and expertise.
Over the last few years, Chinese companies have invested nearly $8 billion in Egypt, and there is optimism that much more money will be pumped into that economy in the future. As Africa's cities make room for more citizens, making use of expertise from China seems to be the right way to go.